They say it's all because we eat too much. We aren't active enough. Well, it's time for some sweet revenge, because it's not our fault. The truth is that all calories you eat are not equal. In this program, Dr. Robert Lustig explains the truth about obesity and how to improve your food choices and your life. And now, please welcome Dr. Robert Lustig.
Thank you. This program will change your entire thinking about obesity, diets, and what really causes many of our most dangerous diseases. Get ready for some shocking facts and the debunking of some common myths based on the latest scientific research. I am going to explain what causes many of the chronic diseases that our children and our grandchildren now face, and give you the information and the tools that you need to be able to feel better, become healthier, change your life. First, why does a pediatrician have the answer to what ails adults? Because now children are getting the chronic diseases that adults only got before. I want to tell you about two of my very young patients. Kay was a perfectly healthy young lady until age 13 when she was in a devastating car accident. She was in the intensive care unit unconscious for a month. And then when she woke up, she started eating and gaining weight at the rate of over 2 pounds every month, non-stop for the next 5 years. She had damaged an area of her brain called the hypothalamus, which is ground zero for energy balance. And because that area was damaged, she could not control her weight. She was releasing too much of the hormone in her body, insulin. We're going to talk a lot about insulin today. Insulin is the energy storage hormone. So everything she ate, she stored as fat. We ended up putting her on a medication that lowered her insulin, and over time, she lost all the weight that she had gained. Let me tell you about a second patient named Jenny. She was born healthy, and she and her mother were both vegans. But she was also at risk for type 2 diabetes, just like Kay was. How come? Because she ate a steady diet of processed food loaded with sugar. And that caused her insulin to climb to dangerous levels, just like Kay's, and it made her sick as well. Type 2 diabetes is a debilitating disease, but it's often reversible. And I'm going to explain more about insulin and diabetes and how to reverse it later in the program. You see, healthy children are now becoming sick because of what they eat and drink, and at younger and younger ages. And what goes for children now goes for adults, gaining weight and becoming chronically ill. Now, we all know that obesity is an epidemic in adults. The processed food and soft drink industries promote the idea that obesity is caused by eating too much and exercising too little. They say the problem is in the quantity of food that you eat, not in the quality of food that they sell. They call this common sense. And we've swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. But I'm a scientist. I don't believe in common sense. I believe in science. And the science tells us something entirely different. Years ago, type 2 diabetes was an adult disease only. In 1980, virtually no children had type 2 diabetes. This is the preventable form of diabetes. It used to be so rare that such children were reported in medical journals. Back then it was 0, and today it's 60,000. Now, most people think obesity is caused by two behaviors: increased intake, decreased output. Gluttony, sloth. If you're fat, it's your fault. If obesity is about eating too much and exercising too little, then how come we now have an epidemic of obese 6-month-olds? They don't diet or exercise, and they don't choose what they eat. As a pediatrician, I have a hard time believing kids are to blame. Something else has to be going on here. Now, obesity is an epidemic in children. It's an epidemic in toddlers, even in newborns. We think that a fat, healthy baby is a good thing. You can't tell just by looking at that baby whether he or she is just fat or whether it's due to something much more ominous. In the last 25 years, birth weight has increased by 0.5 pound all around the world. And when you measure the body composition, that extra weight is extra fat. Where'd that fat come from? Turns out it's what crossed the placenta, what the mother ate during the pregnancy. And that grew those fat cells before birth. And they keep growing and they never go away. This is truly the gift that keeps on giving. But what if I told you that the problem isn't even really about obesity? Obesity is a symptom or a sign of the real problem. Obesity itself is not a disease, and obesity doesn't always equal diabetes. Example, obesity is increasing worldwide at the rate of 1% per year. But type 2 diabetes is increasing at the rate of 4% per year. If diabetes were just a subset of the larger obesity, then how can you explain that? Well, you can't, because it ain't true. Thin people get diabetes too. Look at China. Look at India. Diabetes through the roof, 11% prevalence without being obese, because obesity and diabetes are not the same. Not every obese person is metabolically ill. About 80% are. But that means that 20% of the obese are metabolically healthy. Conversely, you might think that all thin people are healthy. Not so. Up to 40% of the normal weight population get the same exact diseases as do the obese. They get type 2 diabetes. They get high blood pressure. They get heart disease. They get fatty liver disease. In other words, the fat sick people and the thin sick people overlap when it comes to illness, as you can see here. And it turns out there are more thin sick people than there are fat sick people. Let's take a look. Over here, we see 3 body scans. On the left, there's a body scan of an obese person. You can see their love handles on the sides there. And there's their liver. And that's looking pretty healthy in this obese person. Now in the middle, you see an obese patient who is much more like the common scenario, and you can actually see the ground glass appearance of the fat in the liver. Now on the right, you see a thin person. Not so much fat on the outside, but the fat instead is on the inside of the organs, and that liver has that same ground glass appearance of the fat in the liver. The same sign of fatty liver damage as the obese person who's ill. Thin sick, not just fat sick. Liver fat is a major risk factor for diabetes, even if you don't have a lot of body fat. Even if you can't see the fat, it's still there. And the key is that many thin-looking people are actually fat inside. Yeah, I said inside. This is so common that we doctors even have a name for it. It's called TOFI, T-O-F-I. Thin on the outside, fat on the inside. Real medical terms, swear. So someone who looks quite thin might have a very bad diet and might have visceral, abdominal fat, the fat around the internal organs. And this puts you at just as much risk for disease as someone who's obese who has the same amount of fat inside. So what is this telling us? Well, if obese people and thin people can both get sick, then what's the real problem? Well, it's called metabolic syndrome. It's the sum of how your metabolism works and the chemical processes in your body and how they work together. They can either make you well or they can make you sick. Metabolic diseases include diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, lipid or blood fat diseases. Now add to that obesity-related metabolic diseases such as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, kidney disease, polycystic ovarian disease, and then still more diseases that travel with obesity, such as cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and others. These metabolic diseases account for 75% of the disease in America, and they're from the way different foods are metabolized by the body. And 75% of those are likely preventable. These diseases are because you literally turn food to fat and it accumulates around your organs. We're told that calories from carrots are the same as the calories from cheesecake. Not so. And it is here that we find out that a calorie is not a calorie.